It's the way I pronounce her name Clara in my video, and in the movie it's pronounced Clara. I would like to apologize to all the Claras out there. This video is brought to you by Coco Bella coconut water, which is really good. And also, it's not sponsored, actually. I just wanted to say that. Sponsor me, people. Hi everyone and welcome to another video. If you recall last year, I made a video talking about my experience reading Regretting You by Colleen Hoover. And that's like one of my first times reading Colleen Hoover ever. And it was a trip, if the trip was mid. But I still think that it will be a great idea to follow up that video by discussing the movie, because I want to be comprehensive in exploring this universe or world or whatever it is you want to call it. Colleen Hoover is a very infamous figure within the book and publishing community. I have my own grievances about her and her style of books, but I recognize that her success has a lot to do with how breezy it is to read her books. Like, it's super easy and super fast. And her books can be quite sensational and dramatic, and that makes for an interesting read as well. From the way I see it, reading Colleen Hoover books is the equivalent of watching popcorn movies where you turn off your brain for a couple of hours and just enjoy some brainless entertainment. However, that is where my issue with Colleen Hoover comes in. And I think I share this opinion with a lot of booktubers and video essayists on YouTube too. A lot of the things that Colleen Hoover features in her books are just not appropriate to be discussed in the way that she does it in her books, which is very surface level. Many subject matters within these books tend to be controversial and sensitive, so it almost feels exploitative and problematic that Colleen Hoover is only using these topics as shock value. And before you cry out misogyny that I'm being harsher on Colleen Hoover compared to male authors or filmmakers, let me just say I feel the same way whenever I'm watching like brainless action movies and then they throw in like sensitive issues or controversial topics into them. Not in my brainless action movies, not like this, not like this. I just think like if you want to deal with those kinds of themes, like you have to deal with them respectfully. Like, don't just make them a throwaway plotline or a plot twist, because it just feels like you're doing it for the sake of being like shocking, when in reality, a lot of people might be struggling with these kinds of things. Anyway, Regretting You, I would say, is probably one of the lesser problematic books from Colleen Hoover. Compared to her other books, Regretting You felt more subdued. The book is written from two perspectives: a mother, Morgan, and her 17-year-old daughter, Clara. Morgan became pregnant with Clara when Morgan was about 17, and it's very conflicting because Morgan had always been a caretaker, whether it is to Clara or Chris, her husband, or Jenny, her younger sister. Morgan never really had the opportunity to put herself first. So does she regret that? The book's inciting incident is Chris and Jenny dying in a car crash, which of course devastates Morgan and Clara. But things get even more complicated when Morgan finds out that Chris and Jenny had been having an affair. So the story that follows is basically this mother and daughter trying to navigate grief, all while Morgan tries to preserve the pristine memory that Clara has of her father and aunt because she worships them. And this involves Morgan trying to hide the affair from Clara. My biggest problem with the book when I read it is I just think it dragged and not a lot of things happened within the book, so that's saying something. Like, it's dragging, but nothing happened. I thought the concept and the idea of Regretting You can lead to a potentially interesting book. Unfortunately, the execution is very lacking. At the end of my Regretting You book video, I came to the conclusion that Colleen Hoover is probably good at coming up with story ideas, but she lacks the ability to execute these ideas with nuance. The way Colleen Hoover writes is very surface level, and her prose, while it is easy to read, it doesn't sing. Most of the time, her writing makes you go, oh, okay, like she really wrote this down. She really wrote, "We laughed at my son's big balls." Does that make Colleen Hoover entertaining? Yes, potentially. Does that make her books good? No, not particularly. Because of that, I was curious to see if my theory about Colleen Hoover is right, in that she is good at coming up with ideas and that her ideas might be better executed by people who are not her. So walking into this movie, I had that in mind. Long story short, the Regretting You movie is meh. But I would say it is a little bit better than the book. But that's not saying much because you can only polish a turd to a point, and I feel very mean saying that. I'm sorry. I'm glad to see the criticisms that I have about the book is actually addressed by this movie, which kind of flattered me because what do you mean I have the same instincts as professional filmmakers? But the movie was weird, like it was almost liminal, and I cannot fully articulate why that is the case. It doesn't have that human touch, like, I don't know, it just doesn't feel human. It just feels like aliens imitating how humans would act under these circumstances. It's like the situation that is happening in the movie, it's like sad. But the movie plays out in a weirdly comedic manner with how stiff everything was. Or I don't know, maybe the movie wasn't funny, but I just found it funny because that was my way of coping with the fact that I am spending time watching this movie. For the most part, the movie is incredibly faithful to the book. The movie's plot basically follows the books to a T, and that is why I do not feel compelled to recap the movie. I'll just link my recap for the book because it's essentially the same. Some stuff is removed or changed, as you know, you always do when you're adapting books. Like, for example, the plotline where Clara and Miller are trying to make a short film that's completely cut out of the movie altogether. The stuff that the movie removed wasn't really essential to the story at all, like it was mostly padding. As a result, the movie has better pacing than the book. And it's not surprising to see that the movie, while managing to hit all these major plot beats, it doesn't run longer than 2 hours. And it confirms to me that the book had way too much stuff happening and unnecessary things in there. That's why I felt the book was really dragging and boring. They had too much padding and fluff that is really not addressing what the book is supposed to address. But that's not to say that the movie is entertaining, because I feel like the entertaining stuff is unintentional. Like, the entertaining stuff isn't the plot, it's just the choices made by the actors in bringing their characters to life. Whether it is by making them a bit more quirky or doing like really questionable acting choices.
Stop staring at him.
I do like Morgan as a concept of a character, and I don't think Colleen Hoover executed the character well in the book, which is a shame because I feel like there's a lot of potential with her. Morgan's arc revolves around her being a caretaker since a very young age, even before she had Clara. Her identity has always been being a provider or someone in relation to other people. Clara called Morgan predictable because of this, not because Morgan is predictable in like a bad way, but in a way where Morgan is always stable and she is always there. And that kind of made Morgan wonder, is there more to life than just being this rock that people have to rely on? And is she allowed to be more than that? Is she allowed to be selfish once in a while? There's so much to unpack there, so much nuances, discussions about, I guess, motherhood and being, you know, dependable. How important is it to draw boundaries? When are you allowed to draw boundaries? How should you prioritize your mental health, you know? Like the giving tree, I guess. There's just like so many things that you could do with this character, and I don't think the book delivered on that promise. Morgan's arc felt underwhelming in the book, but then again, that's like every aspect of the book. Like, the book is just underwhelming in general. However, I think the movie did a little bit better in this regard. They place a lot of emphasis on Morgan's interests in architecture and interior design. In the book, it's a little bit more up in the air whether Morgan actually likes architecture or interior design. And a lot of what Morgan is doing in the book is her trying to figure out her passion. And in the movie, they showed that Morgan already has an interest in architecture and interior design even before she became a mother. So it's more about her stepping out and actually embracing this passion of hers. In the flashbacks and in a lot of moments in the movie, Morgan is shown sketching, you know, her dream kitchen designs. And it was a good choice for the movie, I think, to use this as like a visual way to show the change in Morgan's character, because they visibly show Morgan rehauling the house, namely the kitchen, to make it her own, because she's been living in Chris's parents' home. So it's like, it's not even her home, it's Chris's home. And now that he's gone, she wants to gain independence from him. So this is visually represented by Morgan tearing apart the kitchen and actually putting in the stuff that she likes. And then Morgan actually makes the space her own. And I think it was a nice way to visibly show her character development and her growing independence from Chris. I think overall Morgan had a bit more agency and focus in the movie, which I am grateful about because, again, like, I prefer her compared to Clara as a point of view character. I also think the book did a lot more telling rather than showing, and that is also something that was fixed by the movie. For example, the book made a lot of points to say that Morgan is an overbearing and overprotective mother to Clara, and I don't really feel that. But in the movie, I feel like they showed it pretty well in the way that Allison Williams portrayed Morgan to be quite quirky and neurotic, and those combination really made her the overbearing and overprotective mother to Clara that made Clara feel suffocated. Overall, I think Allison Williams did a good job portraying how this woman is really trying to hold everything together, especially after the deaths of her sister and her husband, and how she struggled to do that. I also feel Allison Williams and McKenna Grace have really good chemistry as mother and daughter, which I do not see a lot of in the book. In the books, they felt very at odds with each other, whereas in the movie, you feel the closeness between them and how the grief really tore them apart. So it felt more satisfying when you see them reconciling, and it also feels a little bit sadder to be seeing how this family is growing apart because of the tragedy. So the movie does a better job of making you care for these two characters. I just like Allison Williams' performance in this. Not that it's a good performance, mind you.
Look, we need to talk.
Nah, I'm good.
I just think she's very charismatic and she makes sometimes really bizarre choices. And as a result, movie Morgan feels more compelling than book Morgan, only by accident. Allison Williams in general plays really good freaky characters like in Get Out or as Megan's mom. So a part of me, when I heard that she was cast in this movie, I sort of fear a little bit that she would be stifled by playing someone so straightforward. But I actually like her version of Morgan. She's a bit freaky in a good way. And Morgan comes across as someone who has the potential to be a cool mom or a girl boss mom, but the circumstances just dampened her slay.
Was that not you? That was you.
But this is the other thing that I observe about Colleen Hoover as a writer. She has this uncanny ability to strip anything interesting off of every single one of her characters. So her characters feel like they talk the same way, they act the same way, or they think the same way. So there's no one interesting within the books. For Regretting You, I feel like the characters are just so bland. So whenever the book cuts between Clara's and Morgan's narration, I just don't feel the difference at all. All the characters are acting the same way. However, because of how much these characters are just blank slates, having actors who have their own interpretations for these characters, even if they bring in really questionable and strange acting choices, it somehow adds something to the bland characters because of how strange they are acting. For example, with Dave Franco, any acting choice that he made, it makes me go, because I can never take Dave Franco seriously because he was in the Jump Street movies, which I love, and he is so hilarious in that. And I just cannot take him seriously. And that made the character more interesting to watch by default because his character, Jonah, in the book is so boring. But because it's Dave Franco doing all his weird Dave Franco things, he becomes more interesting.
Dude, what are you doing?
What, Cleanie?
Hungry and ready to eat.
I'm here, buddy. Daddy's here. Mother Earth is dying.
There's individuality because it's Dave Franco, if that makes sense. In terms of the younger cast, I think they did a really great job because obviously, they're young and this is a really big break for them. So obviously they want to do well, and I think they did incredibly well. But I just don't vibe with Clara's story at all. I'm just bored by her story. I think it's because I'm closer in age to Morgan now, so I could relate to her somewhat. I'm not a mother, but I also feel that sense of dread of am I doing what I should be doing with my life? I felt the same way that Morgan probably felt, at that stage in her life. So that's why I felt more drawn to Morgan's story. And I also feel that's why I feel there's more potential to say more interesting things from Morgan's story. Whereas with Clara's storyline, she's your typical rebellious young woman in high school trying to be an actress, and it's quite a cliched story. It's one thing if the author has something interesting to do with that very stereotypical story, but Regretting You doesn't provide anything interesting tackling this cliched story. I feel like you can watch some other coming-of-age film that can handle this arc better. That's why whenever we cut from Morgan's point of view and Clara's point of view, the movie kind of stops for me. I just don't care about Clara's, high school life as much as I care about her relationship with Morgan. Overall, having dual perspectives in this story does not work in the story's favor at all. It does not serve the story in the way that Colleen Hoover probably intends it to. Because the thing is, the story could still work if you were to just pick one person to tell the story from. And the reason I'm saying this is because with Clara's storyline, it feels very YA. But then whenever it cuts to Morgan's story, it's more of a domestic drama about the implications of this grief and this additional realization that there's this cheating happening behind this woman's back. And this woman is trying to reconcile the fact that she potentially threw away most of her life taking care of two really ungrateful people who clearly don't care enough for her, that they're happy to be having an affair behind her back all these years. So it's jarring cutting from that, then cutting to Clara and Miller talking about film school and what it'll be like to be like in the same school and being cutesy and stuff, when this woman is having an existential crisis.
You are not the one living in his house, living in his parents' house, surrounded by his things. His stuff is everywhere. It is everywhere.
The tonal whiplash makes things confusing and it just bogs down the movie and the book. It feels like Colleen Hoover wants to have her cake and eat it too. She's probably hoping to tap into two audiences with like younger audiences as well as mature audiences. But it just doesn't work because I doubt these two audiences overlap. The people who like Clara's storyline are probably younger, so they wouldn't appreciate Morgan's storyline. Meanwhile, people who like Morgan's storyline, like myself, might find Clara's to be juvenile and would not appreciate it unless they're trying to relive their high school experiences or high school days, to which, you know, like, more power to you. But I just don't think like the people who stayed for one thing would stay for another thing, because, you know, these are just totally very different. To me, the book and the movie just becomes unfocused, like it's trying to pander to two audiences and they just can't make up their minds about what story that they want to tell. Because the thing is, with stories like The Hunger Games, that is a YA book and movie, but it does appeal to a broader audience because it is a good story. But undeniably, at its core and its identity, it is still a YA story. But it's just a good story, and that's why it appeals to people, because it's a good story. The same way that Bluey is undeniably a children's show, but parents can still enjoy it because the story is good. Point blank, Regretting You is not a good story. But I can see the story working better if Colleen Hoover were just to focus from one perspective and hopefully get broader appeal from this being a good story in general. I don't know the audience that the book is trying to reach, and that is the biggest problem. For the movie, however, I can say that maybe it's trying to be a contemporary drama, at least the way that it presents itself. But the marketing has been directed more towards young people by virtue of the fact that it has young people in its cast, and they heavily rely on these young people to promote the movie on things like TikTok. So it is confusing for me, mostly because, you know, like, it doesn't know which audience it wants to cater more towards. I do think my hypothesis that Colleen Hoover is better at coming up with story concepts rather than executing them. I think that hypothesis is proven by this movie. The movie is better than the book, only slightly. And I think because the movie really tries to be faithful to the source material, that's why the movie is not as good as it can truly be. I feel like if the movie were to rehaul the whole book, it would have been better, but because it wants to be faithful, the movie is just, you know, it's just that. But I would love to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comments. Have you read the book? Have you watched the movie? How would you rate the books and the movies? Another question, should I do another one of these like Colleen Hoover book reviews and movie reviews? They have reminders of him coming out and I'm kind of like, maybe I should make a video, I don't know. But we'll see. I mean, like, if I have the time, I'll see if I can read the book and do the video on the book. But if I don't have time, I might just do a video on the movie. Anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like this video, please comment, like, share it, engage with the video overall, and maybe also consider subscribing to the channel for more video essays and commentaries too. But apart from that, thank you again for watching the video, and have a good day, night, dusk, dawn, whatever time you're watching it. Maybe you're watching it at 2 a.m. to which thank you if you're falling asleep to this video, which I think is actually the best compliment for a YouTuber. If you are, let me know. But if you're falling asleep to this video because I am boring, thank you nonetheless for watching my videos. But yeah, I'll shut up now. Bye.